The Ballad of Andy and Barney. Andy and Barney were lawmen, bravest you ever did see. Warned every crook in the record book to stay out of Mayberry. They were the law.
Yes, they were the law, and they didn't know fear.
The Andy Griffith Show.
I guess to sum it up, you could say there's 3 reasons why there's so little crime in Mayberry. There's Andy, and there's me, and baby makes 3.
Now on MeTV Fresno.
Hi, I'm John Malos. Welcome to this live edition of Connect With Me on the showroom floor at Ventura TV on this day. Special edition of Connect With Me here, Ask an Expert. We're going to be talking about the Freddie Gray case in Baltimore and the actions of some members of the Fresno Police Department. 436-MeTV, option 11. Do call in. We have an expert in the house today to talk about all this and much more. Back in a moment. Back here on the program today, Connect With Me on the showroom floor at Ventura TV. It's Connect With Me on MeTV Fresno as usual. We'll be talking to an expert here in the building, talking about this police well, you know, I think all the rash of police actions across the country that have sparked so many riots in the past year and a half or so. And we'll talk about the situation here in Fresno as well. Matter of fact, if you have the Washington Post online, you might go online and check out this article that was in today's Washington Post, an article written by one of their reporters about the Fresno Police Department and how they're bringing people together and how Fresno is not rioting like much of the nation is over some of the police shootings. Anyway, check it out. It's in today's Washington Post. In the meantime, you are watching us live on Comcast, channel 187, 43.6, and 13.1 every day, Monday through Friday, here at 10 o'clock to 11. And then the replay comes later in the day on some of the other broadcast stations here on Ventura TV Broadcasting, 2 o'clock, 13.6, 8 o'clock at night on 4.6 Biz TV. And of course, the Twitter account is at John Malos Me TV. And so today, an expert in the house to talk about some of the latest developments in the Freddie Gray case that sparked so many of those riots nearly a couple of weeks ago in the city of Baltimore. In fact, you might recall the Orioles had to play that one home game in front of no fans. They had 0 people in the stands except for some members of the media. The latest from Baltimore is, as we roll the videotape and take a look at Freddie Gray being arrested on April the 12th, of course, the state attorney general there in Maryland, Marilyn Mosby, said that she had filed charges against 6 of the officers. Mosby had made that announcement to the world that Gray's death had been ruled a homicide, and the police, 6 officers, were responsible. In fact, those 6 were arrested. Charges range from homicide, second-degree murder, manslaughter, misconduct charges. As you can see, this is amateur video. The officer seen dragging Gray into a police van, but somewhere along the way, he suffered a spinal cord injury. How that occurred, no one knows at this point. As mentioned, this happened on April the 12th. He later died of his injuries just about a week later. As we go to the videotape of some of the riots, this is what happened: rioting, looting, burning in the streets of Baltimore. Mosby said the fatal injury occurred to Gray while he was riding in the van. Remember, the Washington Post reported that a prisoner sharing that van with Gray told investigators he could hear Gray banging against the walls and was intentionally trying to hurt himself. He since, though, has retracted that statement. There was also an undisclosed stop en route to the police station, which officers failed to report to the proper investigators. Live in our studio right now is Peter Kapetan, longtime defense attorney here in the city of Fresno. He is here to answer any and all of your questions. He will dissect this case and what are the chances of these 6 officers being convicted of some of these charges, especially the driver of that van. charged with second-degree murder. We'll also talk about the Fresno PD, Keith Foster, in this article written in today's Washington Post. 436-MeTV, option 11. We're back with our program here as we have an open line on this Thursday morning. Back in a moment.
Euronews, most watched news channel in Europe.
Frigidaire. It means the first refrigerator. It means a history of innovations that help make your home life better. And now we introduce the new Frigidaire French door refrigerator with over 100 ways to organize for maximum flexibility. Built with adjustable flip-up and slide under shelving and stackable crisper drawers. It's the refrigerator that flexes to fit it all, no matter what your day will bring. Frigidaire, over 90 years of legendary innovation.
See the full line of Frigidaire appliances at Ventura TV Electronics and Appliances.
Back here on the program on Connect with Me on this Thursday morning, Peter Kapetan is here. How are you, Peter? Good
Great.
to see you.
Thanks for having me, John.
Hey, thanks for taking the time. I know how busy you are. So this police thing in Baltimore, we all saw the riots, we all saw the video, we all saw the burning and the looting and all that kind of stuff, and we saw the mom pounding on her son to get off the streets. Interesting video. I think I would have done the same with my son, probably. Get off the streets. What are the chances that these charges are going to stick? Because there's so many implications about this. No one knows how his spinal cord was snapped. There's still some question as to whether or not this was a legitimate arrest, because was it a switchblade or wasn't it? From what we've read, it looks like, you know, this case is kind of skimpy.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it's very skimpy. I think the biggest thing is going to be the venue of where the trial is going to be held. I think people have got to understand, you know, that is a big component that you have to look at whenever you look at a trial. If it's held in Baltimore, the odds go up that there may be a conviction. If it's held somewhere else, depending on where it's held, those odds go down. But from a purely looking at it from a legal standpoint, I think the charges are very weak, frankly.
Right. Talking to Peter Kapetan, 436-MeTV, option 11, if you have a comment about Freddie Gray. And just reading an article here about the Freddie Gray case online, it says that Freddie Gray was a known convict, a career street drug dealer, acting very suspicious on that day, April 12th, when he was arrested, and police made what was called a Terry stop. I had never heard of that term before, commonly known as a stop and frisk situation. Explain what that means.
Well, correct, and that's what you got to look at, and that's what you don't get when you look at the news reports in this normally. In these cases, you have to look at them step by step as they go along. And so first thing you're looking for from a criminal defense standpoint is whether the officers had probable cause to even detain or contact Mr. Gray.
Yeah.
And what a Terry stop is normally an officer just can't come up and start searching you, all right? Yeah. But if they have reasonable suspicion that criminal activity may be afoot, okay, meaning that there's something that just doesn't look right, that gives the officer grounds to stop you, and they can actually frisk you, and that's called a Terry frisk, if they're afraid that you're armed, potentially. They have to have what they call articulable facts to see that. But what they'll do is, you see a guy, you know, they think that this guy's casing a joint maybe for a robbery or something like that. Well, you don't want the robbery to happen and then have them actually have to take action. So the officers can make contact with the individual, and then they can conduct a safety pat-down or a Terry stop, a Terry frisk, to see if the person has anything on them.
Interesting. Caller, go ahead. Are you there?
Oh, yes, good morning to both of you. I want him, Mr. Kapetan, to either give me an opinion or his idea on this. As we all know, many young and older African-American men and boys have been killed by police. And as we have all seen, there's been riots and looting and burning and everything. But also, there's been many Hispanic young men and men killed by police. But you don't see this happening in this situation. What is your opinion on this? And I'll listen to the answer over the air.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, and I think I've got a unique perspective on this. I've actually prosecuted officers as far as civilly for excessive force. And so for the group that says there's no racism, there's no racial profiling, that's ridiculous. I mean, we live in the real world, and that happens. Does it happen as often as the other side says? I don't think so, but that does happen. As far as why one group, and in this case you're talking Hispanics versus African Americans, react differently, I mean, I don't know. That's a cultural, I think you're in just as good a position to make your own opinion in that respect. I think it's just a cultural difference as to how people vent their anger. You know, I mean, I've seen all groups of people, whites, blacks, Hispanics, Asians, riot at times. You get that mob mentality. And I think what happens a lot of times is you get a fairly small segment which starts the violence, and then the mob mentality takes over, and other people respond with that.
Right. Let me ask you, going back to this certain timeline here and what happened and how to justify them stopping him. They had reasonable suspicion to stop him. That's called a Terry stop. But once Gray saw that the officers were approaching him, boom, he takes off on foot. So according to the line, I know Maryland is different than California. There are different laws, 2 different states. But generally speaking, if you spot an officer and you eyeball him and then you start running, under the law, do they have the right to chase you and arrest you just for fleeing?
That's a very interesting question, and it depends on the circumstances. Generally, you have no obligation to make contact with law enforcement officers. So if a law enforcement officer comes up to you and they don't have these articulable facts or reasonable suspicion, you can tell them no and just walk away, or you can run away. You do not have to stay there to talk to them. But if they have reasonable suspicion that there may be criminal activity afoot and they're going to investigate that, once you start running away, it's arguably in California is what they call a 148, resisting or delaying arrest, because now they have grounds to approach you, to contact you, and then once you flee, that actually gives them more a reasonable suspicion, because now you're actually fleeing from them.
If this, if the charges stick, let's say, Peter, how big an issue will this Terry stop be? Because that to me is the beginning of everything. Did the officers have the right to stop and frisk and take down Freddie Gray at that moment? Well,
I think that is
that's the legal question, right?
For most of the actions, yeah, that's the very basis of the prosecutor's argument here, is that they didn't have reasonable suspicion or they didn't have probable cause to arrest Mr. Gray. And those are 2 different standards. The reasonable suspicion one's the first one for the Terry stop. And if they cross that hurdle, then a lot of these officers, I think, are going to get out of this case on a summary judgment or on a directed verdict, meaning that it's not even going to go to trial, because that was her basis for claiming that they were doing something wrong.
So when or how he broke his spinal cord will become secondary to the issue?
Absolutely. That'll become secondary, well, to many of the officers, but for some of them it may be different. And if you read through the article, which we did, you'll notice you have to take these individual officers individually. You can't lump them all together. So the initial arresting officer, if he had probable cause to stop him, and then they are reasonable suspicion to stop him, and then probable cause to arrest because the knife was potentially a switchblade, then he's almost out of it, because once he made the arrest, he turned them over to the paddy wagon, we used to call it, the police wagon. And then it's their responsibility for the transportation. That guy, the initial officer, is going to say, I did my job, I'm done with him. I've turned him over to somebody else, now it's their responsibility to take him. So that initial officer may be out of this completely, and then you got to focus on how he broke his neck in regard to the people who were supposedly responsible for transportation.
So that first hurdle is a huge one then, huh?
Absolutely.
That's the key to the whole case, maybe.
I think it's a key to a large part of the case, and also it is a key to the prosecutor's credibility, because she came out and said they didn't have probable cause.
Yeah, I mean, she immediately came out. I mean, the day the findings came out, and I thought they weren't going to go public with it.
Yeah, she jumped the gun. That was her mistake.
You think she made a huge mistake?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Wow. We're talking with Peter Kapetan, a longtime defense attorney here On Connect with Me on this day, it's Ask an Expert Day. We're talking about Freddie Gray and trying to break the case down and see if these charges may or may not stick. 6 officers arrested, as you know. 436-ME-TV option 11. We do have an open line here. Hey, remember, he's got a law practice with his brother, Mark Kapetan, and Mark was unavailable today. He's in court doing business. And so we got Peter and we got you, the viewers, back in just a moment.
Hello, I'm John Walsh. We need your help to capture this fugitive. Julio Cesar Guevara Mejia is wanted by the FBI in Sacramento for the attempted murder of a 19-year-old female in November of 2007. Police say he lured the young woman to a hotel room where he shot her 3 times in the chest. He could be in Palm Springs, California or Houston, Texas. Contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI if you have any information.
Back here on the program with Peter Kapetan, trying to break down this Freddie Gray case, and my gosh, where do we start here? There's so many things to talk about. Let's start with the first full screen I want to pull up. It's called Police Killings and some of the stats, and maybe you can comment, because this kind of directly relates to the caller, the first call that we had today, the woman talking about why certain groups riot, but I've seen every ethnic group, you know, go off the deep end at some point or another. So we don't have the full screen stats on that? What's that?
Forgot it.
You forgot it. Okay. We have the 6 Baltimore police officers who were charged. We do have that full screen, right? Okay. Let's put that up on the screen there, and we can see their pictures. There are all 6 of them, including the driver of the van, and just releasing their photos and putting their names up on the screen and then charging them. Is this going to play any kind of a role in, say, a potential trial, or is this just common practice to put these pictures out there?
I think it's common practice. What I noted, though, is having 3 African-American officers there, it really changes the dynamic of the case, because I think it takes out this racial component, that these officers were racist doing this against an African-American just because he was African-American. And I think what this really is, and I hope people understand this is a issue of law enforcement versus the criminal element of our society in large part. And unfortunately, a lot of times innocent people get swept up into that. But this isn't necessarily a racist or a racial issue.
Yeah, how come it's been played up in the media that way, man? And it hasn't been played up that much. I've heard people talk about it, that there are 3 officers here who are African American, and yet not a huge deal about that made. But it's going to play into the trial.
Yeah, well, I think that's what sells newspapers and TV. There is a part of our society that actually wants this division amongst our citizens, because that's the way they make their money and that's the way they generate their political power.
Yeah, and there's a female right there too. And you know, caller, are you there? Go ahead. What's your comment?
Sir. All I had to say is I think people need to respect their badge. You know, people want to run away. They shouldn't do that.
Okay.
Respect the badge.
Well, yeah, and I think that goes without saying that we should respect police officers. On the flip side of that, though, police officers have to respect their badges too. And what I mean by that is to make sure that they don't go overboard. They don't use excessive force. They don't use racial profiling, if you want to call it that. I mean, as an officer, you know, my dad was a Marine, and he was the most critical on other Marines, because he said, you know, we deserve to have people honor us. We deserve the respect. But with that ability to have honor and respect, you had something to live up to. And what he said is that basically you had to conduct your life with honor and respect, so that you made sure that people would continue having that feeling. So I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, I think, Peter, too, I mean, I appreciate the call, but how do you respect the badge when there's so much distrust between the general public and law enforcement in certain cities? Maybe not in Fresno. Well, I don't know. I can't speak to that in Fresno. I mean, maybe there are some people who don't trust the police department here. but there is so much distrust across the country, and we've seen it the last year and a half. So how do you respect somebody who you distrust?
That's difficult, and I could tell you, from when I started 27 years ago, when I would ask a jury, do you believe a police officer more than you would a civilian? I mean, it was usually 10 times out of 10, yes, I do, because I respect the badge. It's not that way anymore. You have a lot of jurors who are very skeptical of the veracity of police officers, and I think that's unfortunate.
That's why we have so many problems.
Absolutely.
And so many riots the last year and a half. Caller, are you there? Go ahead.
Yes, in regards to the previous caller, respect is earned, not given, and with the officers, especially having the badge, and the public, both of us, we have to keep earning that respect. But that's my first comment. The second comment is, I think this may be turning into a class issue. I don't know if you think that with me also, but I heard you say that, or you, Mr. Malice, say that. Sorry. That you've seen all different races being subjugated to the police, either too much force or whatnot. And, I see it on both sides, too, or actually on all sides. I'm just wondering, do you think that could be a way that we're going? It's more of a class issue and not a race issue.
Okay, thanks for the question. I appreciate it. Depressed area of Baltimore, it's been that way for 30 years. In fact, Time magazine had a big article on their front cover, what's changed in Baltimore since, since the '68 riots. Not much. So could it be class warfare in Baltimore?
Well, absolutely, and that's what I think we're getting at earlier, that I don't necessarily find this as a race issue. I think it is a class issue, and that's the crux of the matter. That you're going to have to address those problems. And frankly, though, personally, I don't think we're addressing them correctly, because you have these depressed areas that have been depressed now for 4 or 5 generations, and nothing's changed. So we're doing something wrong, and I think it's just getting worse, because as each generation goes by, the less respect there is for law enforcement. I mean, you got to also appreciate, like I said, I've sued law enforcement, but I respect them. They've got a difficult job, and with this Freddie Gray issue, what struck me right away was that there's no allegations that these men beat him. There's no allegations that they used excessive force against him. So this isn't a case where, white police officers are abusing an African-American suspect by beating him using excessive force. At best, this is a case of guys who just didn't do their job as diligently as they should have when a person was injured.
Yeah, maybe they didn't get medical attention when they should have. Maybe it was negligence.
Yeah, and that's what I think. It's a civil matter. I mean, to charge these guys with murder, I think that's outrageous.
Stretch?
Frankly.
Is it a stretch?
I think it's outrageous, frankly. I mean, unless she can come up with a lot more evidence than she disclosed, she's going to have a problem.
Yeah. Peter Kapetan is here, a longtime defense attorney in Fresno, been practicing for nearly 30 years with his brother Mark, and you're welcome to call in and offer an opinion. 436-ME-TV, option 11. We're back in a moment.
Attention all units. We have reports of 2 motorcycle cops protecting California's highway.
That's for us, good buddy.
The Men of Chips are on ME-TV.
Hi, I'm John Baker.
I'm John Baker. It's Officer Baker.
He's the blonde one.
Hi there.
Officer Poncherello, man.
Frank Poncherello.
Oh, I'm Frank Poncherello.
And he's the one who's Eric Estrada.
There's no way I wouldn't remember a name like that.
Catch the blonde one and the one who's Eric Estrada.
Now on MeTV Fresno, Xfinity 187.
Back here on the show talking about Freddie Gray in Baltimore and the riots and everything else, and so we got a call coming in. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, I want to put a direct question to your guest. Is this that, I think when the police officers are put in situations like in Baltimore and all that, and it's more about a race issue, I think a lot of the officers need to get an orientation and how they look and how they perceive, a person going down the, sidewalk and walking this way, and kind of automatically say, well, this one might be a bad one, all that. I think the orientation as far as training these officers, they have to be put in a situation where don't jump into a situation that's going to cause a lot of the turmoils like in Baltimore, because in small towns, that's what they do sometimes. The officers, depending on the area you live, gangs and not, they're automatically going to put in their heads that, hey, this one might cause problems, without even thinking about the probable cause, But, it's like John said, officers are put in a situation. It's hard being an officer. Now that everything is gone in Baltimore, there's no trust. In law enforcement, that badge doesn't mean anything. I think they're just trying to get away with what they can get away with, But I really think that they need to get an orientation, especially the rookies coming up or whatnot, because they have no seasoning, as far as being out there on the field, whether it's foot patrol or just drive-throughs, whatever,
Okay.
Yeah, and I appreciate your balance on that as to the officers' jobs. I think you got to understand they've got a difficult job, and do a lot of these guys, first of all, to be an officer, you have to have a little bit of that macho attitude, whether you're a male or a female, because your job is to be aggressive. Your job is to go out and challenge people. So it's like, a football player. I'm shocked when people find football players in their off hours are aggressive. Well, that's their job description. Officers the same way. And for an officer, they have to try to balance the community's interest in getting bad guys off the street and not going overboard. If you live in these depressed communities, you want your officers out there for a large degree to go out and make sure that they're aggressive in their enforcement, because that's the way they get the bad guys off the streets. And I know everybody here in Fresno, I just saw it the other day, a guy riding down the street with a weed eater over his arm and something under his arm, and right away I knew it was stolen. If I had to bet 9 times out of 10 it'd be stolen. But could it have been an innocent conduct? Sure. But do you want your officers to stop that guy and question him and ask him about that stuff? Well, sure you do, especially if it's in your neighborhood. That's what kills me. You want that happening in your neighborhood. Obviously, yeah. Caller, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yes. Both my parents were in the Marine Corps as well. It seems like if you want to have respect, you have to go and have responsibility with that. What I think the general public looks at is the way police officers also go and who gets in trouble. Like, you see people line up along the road selling things, and they don't hassle them because of their economics, but somebody who rolls through an intersection, then they pull them over. I think there's a disconnect between the police department and general public, because I think the police department has continuously put themselves in a different classification. It's now becoming us and them, and we have to protect ourselves because they're not respecting us anymore. And I think it also has a lot to do with economics, with low income versus middle income. And that concludes my statement.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as saying that officers don't respect us. I think the vast majority of police officers are doing their jobs as diligently as they can. They got in it to the profession to actually help their communities. There's some bad officers, absolutely there's some bad officers, but they deal with very difficult circumstances, and I think we'd have to give them the benefit of the doubt in most of these occasions.
Not every cop is a bad cop.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, back here in just a moment, we're talking with Peter Kapetan, 436 MeTV option 11. A lot more to get to on the Freddie Gray case, and we'll also talk about Keith Foster and the Fresno Police Department. Big article in the Washington Post today, in case you missed it. 436 MeTV option 11. We got a call coming in. We'll take it after the break in just a moment.
When you're looking for Whirlpool innovation and quality, Who has the answers, the selection, the price? Ventura TV Appliance. With billions in nationwide appliance buying power, more than Home Depot and Best Buy combined, we'll help you save. Our low prices on Energy Star qualified Whirlpool appliances save you energy and money and pay no interest on select models when paid in full within 12 months. Ventura TV Appliance, serving you since 1951.
Ask an Expert Day. Our expert today is Peter Kapetan, a longtime defense attorney in Fresno. Caller, are you there?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I had what I wanted to say was his Kapetan had said earlier that it had nothing to do with race. I feel it did have something to do with race, not like white, black type of race thing, but where he's black. Because like if you get a call in a neighborhood to where someone white is walking in the neighborhood versus a call to someone black strange walking in the neighborhood, you're going to get a faster response. So they're trained just to automatically, get into a certain defense when they get around a certain group of people. So I do feel that it has something to do with race.
Keep the caller there if you can't. Do you mind if I interject a second here,
That's
Peter?
fine.
Okay. Caller, I want to just challenge you just for a moment on that. And I want to point out that these officers stopped Freddie Gray because he was a known convict, a career street drug dealer, acting very suspiciously, and they stopped him according to a law that's known as a Terry stop, commonly known as a stop and frisk situation. So, and on top of that, 3 of the officers were African American.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it had something to do with the white-black race thing. It has something to do with him being black, or if he hadn't been Hispanic, I don't think that they would have responded as fast as they would have if he was white. They wouldn't have responded as fast. I'm just saying that by him being black, blacks and Hispanics they're going to get a faster response.
Right.
It's just the mindset of the police. It's not the police. It's not police. It's the mindset of those. So I do feel that they've done it because he was black. The way that they treated him was because he was black.
Okay.
Well, and you may have misunderstood earlier. I have no doubts that racism exists, and I don't think it's overt racism, and I think that's what you're kind of getting at. It may be this subtle racism where they respond more aggressively to Hispanics or blacks. I mean, and I have no problem accepting that as being the reality. I just don't think it's the reality in every situation. And in this case, what I'd challenge you on is Freddie Gray was black and he was arrested. Those aren't. They're not necessarily connected. He was in a black neighborhood, so I'm suspecting that most people arrested in black neighborhoods are going to be black. And I mean, you've seen on TV, you watch Cops, and this is the one thing I do like about Cops. It shows you what really happens, where you have a white guy or a white woman driving in a mostly black neighborhood, and the police will stop them. And the reason why they're stopping them is because they're driving slow in a predominantly black neighborhood because they think one of two things. They're looking for drugs or they're looking for prostitution, okay? Is that a racist view? No. Did they use race as one of their probable cause, the elements to look? Absolutely. They said this guy is out of place here. And that's the reality. And I'm not making a judgment call whether that's good or bad. That's the reality of life. And what I don't like is when you listen to the news and they're not accepting reality. Racism is a reality in our world. But you got to look at an individual case to see if racism was a factor in that case specifically. And in this Freddie Gray case, I don't think it necessarily is. It may be. I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm not saying it absolutely is. And that's the issue I have.
Yeah.
I understand. I agree with what you're saying. I don't believe that it has something to do with the white, him being white, him being black, and then the white officers. I have the thing with the mindset it being racism because of the mindset of the officers that, with the way they responded, the way that they reacted. They only reacted that way because he was black, and he was a well, quote unquote drug dealer or whatever.
Yeah.
Accused.
Right.
Okay.
But one other thing I'd like to point out is police officers in general get jaded because they do deal with criminals and bad people on a daily basis. And if you constantly deal with that type of individual, you start to think that all people are like that. And that's one thing I really think they have to work on, is to make sure that these guys get training, they get therapy, they get whatever they need to keep them from getting so jaded. I think that is a big negative amongst all officers.
Let's put up the timeline, the Freddie arrest timeline, and I want to talk about this. When they made the arrest, it says here in the police report, and that's the timeline right there, and keep that up there as we discuss this. The officer noticed a knife clipped on the inside of the front right pocket. The defendant was arrested without force or incident, according to this report. The knife was recovered. Now, upon examination, the officers observed a spring-assisted mechanism, which falls into the unlawful category in the city of Baltimore, which is like a switchblade. It's according to City Code 5922. But then Marilyn Mosby says the officers seated Mr. Gray in a seated position and found a folding knife, which Mr. Mosby said, or Miss Mosby said, was legal under Maryland law. How are they going to resolve this issue? Was it or was it not a legal? Now, if you were one of the defense attorneys for, say, one of the officers, you'd be looking at this and saying, I would assume, hey, I want to see that knife.
Absolutely, and I think they've brought a motion to have the knife released so that they can inspect it. And more interestingly is Mosby's got bigger problems, because even if the knife was legal, if a reasonable officer could believe that it was illegal under the law, then they are protected, because you give the officer the benefit of the doubt. And here it seems that they're saying that the knife did have some type of spring action in it, whether it was a full-on switchblade or it had a spring action. If a reasonable officer believes that it's illegal, then that protects them.
Yeah. So they have, but what are the chances of that defense attorney or whoever asking to see that knife will get to see it?
Oh, he absolutely will. They'll have to release it to him to inspect
law?
it. Yes.
Oh, wow. Caller, are you there? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm here, and thank you so much for having your guest on the show. He's bringing up some awesome points that haven't been talked about. He is speaking with common sense. I do believe she made a rush to judgment on charging these officers, and I agree with him also. Where's the evidence or the smoking gun that she's going to back these charges up with and to arrest all those officers involved? I don't get it. I think she's trying to, I don't know, make a point or boast herself or put a feather in her cap with what she's doing, and unfortunately, I believe she's going to fail. Other than that, there's really nothing there, and no questions, and there's nothing leading up from when he was arrested to when he died. So actually, I don't really see where the injury happened, or, there's just too many questions, and I think she just made a bad rush to judgment, and I'm hoping it doesn't backfire. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I do want to put up the Freddie Gray arrest map, as the police van made several stops, as I understand. That's kind of the outline and the route that they took en route to the police station. And apparently, I don't know if you can make a case for this. Will they make a case out of the fact that they made one unscheduled stop that they did not report to the investigators, or not?
Well, I think they're going to try to make as much hay with it as they can, but this repeated stopping, that's not unusual for a police van. I mean, they don't pick up a suspect and then take him immediately to the police station or to the jail. They'll go around and they'll pick up numerous subjects. That's why they have these bigger vans like this. So I don't see anything about this that's unusual. Matter of fact, what I found interesting is that they kept stopping to check on the guy. Once again, there was no evidence that they were abusing him. They were actually checking on him. Now, whether they made a mistake as to their evaluation of him, that's a different story, but I don't think that's criminal.
Yeah. Caller, are you there?
Yes. When you get stopped by a policeman, what do you have to provide to them besides your driver's license? and proof of insurance, how many questions are you required to answer? Is there things that you don't have to answer? What is the limits on what can a police officer request you to do, and what do you have to do?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
man,
it is, but it's dangerous to give you an answer, because, and that's what I always laugh when people say I know my rights, and then they
they don't know.
They don't, and they start talking to the officers. It really depends on the situation you're in, you know. And what I've told my friends, you got to understand, my brothers were all used to be in rock bands, long hair, you know, the whole 9 yards. And I told them, police officers are going to treat you differently when you look like that versus whether you're in a suit or not, okay? But it depends on the situation. Normally on a routine traffic stop, you have to provide them with your license and your registration and proof of insurance. Those are the main things. They normally cannot get you out of the vehicle on a routine traffic stop, okay, unless they have what they call articulable facts, something that raises their suspicion. And the problem is you have to take it step by step. When an officer first comes up and he stopped you for rolling a stop sign, he should be asking you for your license, registration, things like that. But while he's talking to you, if he smells marijuana or he sees what he thinks is the butt of a gun under your seat, then that raises the level of suspicion for him where he can get you out of the car. So you can't give a definitive answer. In regard to on the street, if you're just walking down the street and the officer has no suspicion, can he come up and talk to you? Absolutely. An officer can come up to you and start talking to you. There's nothing illegal about an officer talking to you. And if you stop and talk to him, that's not a detention because you are voluntarily stopping. He can ask you all the questions he wants as long as you keep talking. If you decide to walk away, technically he cannot do anything about that if he has no grounds for what we talked about as a Terry stop. But if the officer comes up because you're moving back and forth in front of a liquor store, and he thinks it looks suspicious, you've got a bulge in your pocket, things like that. He doesn't know that you're planning to commit a robbery necessarily, but he has suspicion that that may be what's happening. Yeah. So in those cases, he can come up and he can actually do a Terry frisk on you. He can pat you down to see if you have anything. That's why we give these officers leeway. I mean, we don't want officers just to respond to crimes after they've been committed. You know, community action or policing, they're trying to stop crimes from committing. That's why they have this leeway.
Wow. So that Terry stop is, man, more I think about the Terry stop, which I knew nothing about, that's going to be a huge hurdle to clear in this Baltimore case. Talking to Peter Kapetan, defense attorney here in Fresno. 436-ME-TV option 11. A lot more to get to. Back in a moment.
We need help to find this missing child. Hallie Cummings was 7 when she went missing. She was last seen in Satsuma, Florida in February of 2009. This is what we believe she looks like today at age 11. If you have any information, please call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST. That's 1-800-843-5678. Please help bring Hallie Cummings home.
Back here on the program on Connect with Me this morning, we do have a call. I'm going to take it, but is there any chance we could put the police report up on the screen? Because I want to take a look at that real quick with Peter Kapetan here. He is our guest. I know you can't read it that well, but caller, hang on a second, because I do want to say what is in this police report, and I'll get to your call in a moment. As I said, the officer noticed a knife on the inside of the front right pocket. Defendant was arrested without force. How significant is this police report going to be in any kind of a potential trial? I mean,
well, what's significant about it is, I think what most people don't understand about it, this is what we'd call in California, it's a statement of probable cause. It's just a simple one-paragraph report. And what I think it shows is that to the officers, this was really an insignificant event. This was not a huge deal. They stopped a guy who ran from them, and when they stopped him, they found a knife on him. They're going to take him to the jail. The jail's probably just going to release him if he doesn't have any parole or probation holds on him, and that's it. And I think that shows the officer's mindset in this case. They weren't out there to abuse this guy. They're out there just to do their jobs.
Yeah. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I was around in 1964 in L.A. when they had the Watts riots, and all the way from the Watts riots to today, and then talking about the latest ones in Baltimore, that they have never cured the problem that causes things. One is that you were talking about respect. If you don't have respect for yourself, you don't have respect for others. And one of the ways that you have respect for yourself is that you have a job and you're earning money and supporting your family. And this is what the biggest problem is, the unemployment. Last I knew, which is some time ago, that the unemployment rate was 35% in the black community. And if we can't, since 1964 to today, we cannot change and employ more people, and then they don't have any self-respect. They won't have respect for themselves or others. Yeah. And that's what is the real problem here.
That's a good point, sir. Good call, and we touched on that before.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's put up another graphic on this police thing, the statement of charges. The Freddie Gray case in Baltimore has raised a lot of questions, and these are some of the charges here, but we don't know if any of these things are going to stick. And then I want to put up the Mosby statement, because this is most alarming right here to me. Marilyn Mosby, I don't know if you can read that up on your screen there, but she basically says here, Peter, and you can read it right here. I got it on the desk here.
Oh, beautiful.
Here's the statement that gets me. The evidence we have collected cannot ethically be disclosed, relayed, or released to the public before trial. Why not? I don't understand that.
Well, frankly, that's a misstatement of the law, at least as it is in California, and I can't believe that Maryland would be any different. In a criminal case, as opposed to a civil case, the defendant does get all the evidence they have beforehand, because his life is online, his freedom's online. So he actually does get all the evidence they have before the trial starts, and that evidence can be made available to the public if they want, unless a court orders it not to for some very good reasons.
So is she refusing to release it?
It looks that way.
Yeah, I don't know.
And what that does is it makes people even less or more wary of the legal system, because you're not supposed to have these star chambers where people are convicted without the evidence being public, without the trial being public. I think she's really overstepped the line in this case. Now, whether she did it because she thought it was a good reason, she wanted to stop the rioting, that's a different story. That in and of itself, though, is troubling, because justice is supposed to be blind. She shouldn't be catering to one segment of society to stop rioting and things like that.
Caller, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yes. I just wanted to share something with you. Here, about a month or so ago, we deliver newspapers, okay? And this was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and we were in primarily a black community, and we're white, okay? I was with someone else. And we were dropping off a newspaper at a car wash about 2 or 3 in the morning, and at that point, there's nobody there. It's just a couple of lights, and what you do is you drop them off there, and what they do is, I guess, they give them to people who get their car washed. And the police officer pulled up. Now, we're white in a black community, and the police officer pulled up to us and wanted to know what we were doing there. I think that's fair, and then we said, hey, we're just delivering. He said, okay, fine. This is, car pulling into a car wash where there's nobody there. It's a little suspicious. And he said, well, thanks, and he drove off. I don't see anything wrong with that. Another thing, too, here, I just want to mention this. About, I don't know, it might have been a year ago or so, I saw something on television where the black community, I'm not sure what town it was in, but they were at the city council, and they were saying crime is running rampant in our community, and why aren't the police there? And the only thing the police could do there is if somebody's walking and looks suspicious, is stopping them. But this is what the black community wants. They want to be protected. And the only way you can do that is to patrol it. And if somebody looks suspicious, stop them, talk to them. And if they're not doing anything, then they go home. I'm sorry, that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
No, and I think you gave a perfect example you were doing something legal, but did it look suspicious? Absolutely. If you're at a car wash at 2 in the morning when it's closed, that looks suspicious, and that justifies an officer responding. But on the flip side, I try to be commonsensical about this. If you're a black guy and you're always getting stopped for innocent behavior, that would get old after a while. So I mean, we can't ignore the fact that there is racial profiling, and a lot of times it goes overboard. I just don't think it goes overboard all the time as the press would like you to believe.
I want to roll a piece of videotape with sound here. Now, the mayor of Baltimore, okay, Stephanie Rawlings Blake, said this: space to destroy. She wanted to give the riders space to destroy. I want to roll that soundbite. You listen, you be the judge. We'll talk about it on the other side.
And I've made it very clear that I worked with the police and instructed them to do everything that they could to make sure that the protesters were able to exercise their right to free speech. It's a very delicate balancing act, because while we tried to make sure that they were protected from the cars and the other things that were going on, we also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. And we worked very hard to keep that balance and to put ourselves in the best position to de-escalate, and that's what you saw this evening.
Space to destroy. We're going to talk to Peter Kapetan about that statement right after the break, and we also have a caller who's holding on. Back in just a moment.
Want to create something extraordinary? Create perfection. Our lifestyle appliances make it easy. KitchenAid, Ventura TV appliance, and you, when only the best will do.
Going to ask the caller to hold on for just a moment. So you heard the mayor, Stephanie Rawlings Blake, say give them space to destroy. Roll a videotape, Lauren, of them destroying Baltimore, the fire, the B-roll there. We'll talk over this. That's exactly what they did. They went out and destroyed. So can the mayor be held liable for any of this?
No, and we talked about this. I know you were shocked by it, but this is what people have got to be careful of. You got to be careful what you wish for.
But she incited this.
Law enforcement is under no obligation to respond or stop crime. It's like a normal citizen. If you see someone getting beat up, you have no obligation to take actions to prevent it. And most people don't understand police officers are under the same, or have the same freedom. They do not have to stop crime. They cannot put you in a worse situation than you were originally, though. So by her saying that, there's probably no liability on the part of Baltimore for that, because they do not have to.
No recourse at all?
No, and that's the unfortunate thing. And that's what people have got to be careful of. If you start prosecuting these officers, what you're going to have is officers who are going to say, you know what, I'm not going to risk my family's future, my future, by taking action. I'm just going to sit back. Once the crime's been committed, then we'll go in and investigate afterwards. And that's the danger you have.
Man. Caller, go ahead. You're on the air. Caller, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, quickly,
yes,
please.
I have two comments regarding breaking up.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have two comments regarding police. One incident, we had a family member that was pulled over, and the family was playing with flashing fireworks around 11 at night, and the police, the individual pulled over the person and kept asking her questions, asking where she's coming from. She says, I'm playing from Fashion Fair. Asked her about education. I'm a college graduate. That the individual was less than 5 feet tall. This individual had his hand on his gun. Every time she moved a little bit, he grabbed for it. And they held her for about an hour, and even brought a helicopter over her, landed around her, and she was scared, but she had to move out of town because of the harassment she might have. This officer was a black police officer, a big man, and he had a lot of anger in him, and the officer was coming in and out, and they just shook their head and walked away. But no officer stepped in and said, wait a minute, this is, let it go.
Okay. All right. What do you make of that? I don't know. I'm not quite sure I got that whole story, but...
No, I may have had a bad day, and I'm not here to defend officers in that respect. Like I said, do they use excessive force? Do they do things that are wrong? Absolutely, every day. You just have to take it individual cases and examine it on that basis.
I want to switch gears and put up Keith Foster for a minute, the former deputy police chief here in the city of Fresno. He was recently arrested by federal agents, no less. The FBI came in, they did a year-long investigation. They figured out that he apparently was allegedly so. I want to mention that because innocent until proven guilty, dealing drugs. I mean, crossing state lines. He has resigned. What does this tell you about the Fresno Police Department?
This is just tragic. The feds usually have thorough investigations. They're going to have tape recordings, surveillance video. So their cases are usually pretty solid, not all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if these allegations are true, I think it's just horrible for the Fresno Police Department. I think there's going to have to be some cleaning of house done because this is something that your second in command should not be able to get away with without anybody knowing about it.
Caller, hang on a second. Can we put up the pictures of Sharon Schaefer and Robert Navarez? Those are two other deputy police chiefs. There's Schaefer and then Navarez, who in a combined lawsuit sued Jerry Dyer. Is this a reflection of what's going on in the police department? And then you have one deputy police chief who's arrested by the FBI. Oh, what's going on in the Fresno? I know we are not on the inside, so we can only speculate what's going on, but is it a black eye?
Absolutely. You know, and I've sued Fresno Police Department for excessive force, and I've actually sued Chief Dyer directly. And part of the theory of the case was that he's had a past, and he's very open with the past, and I understand he's born again, and that's great. But certain things in your past, I think, have got to disqualify you from certain offices. Now, whether this is the case, I'd leave that up to individuals to decide. But my concern is if you can have the past that he had and made it to become chief of police, then you got a problem with the people under you, because then how do you justify to them that they can't do wrong things? Because if you can do wrong...
The past meaning...
Well, I mean, Chief Dyer has actually given testimonials on his past, as far as his past with, I mean, I don't want to get into it directly, because I'm not sure exactly what he has admitted to.
Right.
But if you have a past like that, it's hard to lead individuals after that.
Gotcha. And does the media have the right to question and probe into the police department? Because there was some question about that in one of the news conferences. You probably remember that. They actually do, don't they?
Not only they have the right, I think that's their job. Or the job of the media is to investigate things like that and to protect us.
Right. Caller, you got 20 seconds. Go ahead. 20 seconds.
I think you took it wrong what the mayor said. I think she said, unfortunately, in giving the protesters their right to protest, they are also allowing these people to destroy.
Okay.
And I haven't heard her come out and say that, but I understand that is one interpretation, and that I think that's a reasonable interpretation also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Getting back to Fresno PD, we got about a minute and a half left. Article in the Washington Post today talking about how there are no riots in Fresno like many other cities around the country because, in part, of partnerships, problem solving, and the relationship between the police department and its residents here in the city of Fresno. Would you agree with the premise of this article?
Yeah, to give Jerry Dyer kudos, Chief Dyer, I think they have done a good job in trying to reach out to the community to build a relationship with the community, and I think that really does help. And I think that's important for officers to be seen by the community as normal people who are out there trying to protect them.
Yeah. Peter, it's always good to see you. Tell your brother Mark I said hi.
I appreciate it, John, very much. It's always fun to be here.
All right. And if they want to contact you quickly, your phone number, I'm sorry.
498-8000, 498-8000. And come down here because I'm going to go shop. You got some great sales going on here today.
All right. One more a quick time with the phone number,
98-8000.
All right. You can contact the Kapetan brothers, both Peter and Mark, longtime defense attorneys right here in the city of Fresno. Thank Peter for his time. Back tomorrow with another edition of Connect with Me. We'll have a family therapist in the house tomorrow. That'll be